Marcus Rashford releases official statement calling out the media, and 8 first-team players set to miss the Manchester derby on Sunday. These are the topics we'll be discussing on this evening's show. But before we get into that, please smash a like on today's video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and let's get straight on into it. So let's start the show off by talking about the Manchester derby on Sunday. So we've had confirmation from Laurie Whitwell in the last half an hour or so that the following players will 100% miss the derby against Man City on Sunday. So you've got Rasmus Højlund, Harry Maguire, Luke Shaw, Lisandro Martinez, Mason Mount, Anthony Martial, Wan-Bissaka and Malacia. So we've got 8 first-team players missing. Erik ten Hag also addressed the media this lunchtime, and he said that it will effectively be the same starting 11 as what it was against Nottingham Forest in the FA Cup on Wednesday night. What do I think of that? I mean, we're going into this game thinking we're going to lose, aren't we, realistically? So anything other than a loss would be a result, in my opinion. If we were to be able to get a point there, that would be a massive result, especially when you consider you're going to have Amrabat, who's a CDM at left back. You're going to have a defensive two of Lindelof and Varane, who, in all fairness, I actually did think looked better than Maguire and Varane, because at least with Lindelof and Varane, we can push further up the pitch, we can press higher, we can play a bit of a higher line without being, found out on the counter-attack. But realistically, when you compare the two sides, you've got Erling Haaland scoring, I think, 5 goals against Luton in the week. You've got, Kevin De Bruyne coming up against Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford, who've got, I think, 5 goals in all competitions. Like, it's uncomparable. And even if we did have, Luke Shaw, Rasmus Højlund, Mason Mount, all of these players who are missing, it would still be a very difficult game for us. So I'm not by any means making excuses. I think, Man City are leap years ahead of Manchester United at the moment. So even if we had our full strength squad, we probably would go into that game thinking we're going to lose. But for us to go in the current condition we are now, it's a big worry. And we just have to hope that we can do what we did to Liverpool away from home, where we get a bit of luck, we defend well, and maybe we steal a point. Like, I know as Manchester United fans, that's not what we want to hear. That's not what we want to live like, but that's where we are at the moment. But what I want you guys to do is let me know in the comment section, what is your score prediction for the Manchester derby on Sunday? Let me know. I'm going to go with, well, I think Man City are going to win, to be honest with you. I think that's a pretty easy bet. Score prediction wise, I think it's going to be bad, to be honest. I feel like it could be 3-4, 3-4-1 maybe, something like that. That's what I'm saying. I'm going into it with those and those anticipations. So anything more than that, if we were to get a draw, that would be a massive result. If we were to get a win, that would be Erik ten Hag's biggest result in his 18 months at the club. So, we've got a hope. But yeah, for me, the hope is very, very minimal. Moving on to the next story, we're going to talk a bit about Marcus Rashford. So he has released an official statement. This is legitimately Marcus Rashford, okay? It's come out via the Players Tribune Football. And I'm going to read out some of the most important bits from this story because it's quite long. The key gist of it, just to summarise for people who don't care about the whole thing, Marcus Rashford is unhappy about how the media have been treating about him. He's unhappy about, I assume, some fan channels are speaking about him. And he's decided to come out publicly and call them out. I'll read out all the things and then we can give our opinions on it. So let's I've got some of the key points here. So all of the bits I read now will be quotes from Marcus Rashford. Rashford says, "I don't normally like to respond to things said about me. It's not my nature. I'm an introvert. I don't even like talking about myself unless I really know you. So 99% of the time I can ignore the noise, but sometimes certain lines get crossed and I can't help but want people to just understand who I am as a person." Okay. He says, "I'm not trying to have a go at the media. I understand the game. You know what I mean? They're not really writing about me. It's like they're writing about a character, Marcus Rashford. It can't just be about me as a 26-year-old lad on a night out or a lad getting a parking ticket. It's got to be about how much my car costs, guessing my weekly salary, my jewellery, or even my tattoos. It's got to be about my body language and questioning my morals and speculating about my family and my football future. There's a tone to it that you don't get with all footballers. Let's just leave it at that." I think let's just talk about this, all right? He's a celebrity. What does he really expect? He's probably one of the most famous footballers in the UK at the moment in the Premier League, I'm not saying based on ability, but if you go into any school and say, "Do you know who Marcus Rashford is?" I'm sure every single child in most schools would know who Marcus Rashford is. If you went and spoke to most adults, they know who Marcus Rashford is in the UK. So for him to be saying, oh, I don't understand why they're, writing stories about me going out getting drunk the day before training as if that's something that should be all right. Like, I don't really get it. Of course, they're going to talk about how much money you earn. Of course, they're going to talk about your cars and your jewelry, because that's not normal. For me or you or most normal people, we don't earn £300,000 a week or whatever his salary is. We don't have 20 sports cars and, all of this really expensive jewelry. Like, we live normal lives. So, of course, that this is going to be talked about in the media. Marcus Rashford then goes on to say, he says, I think some of it goes back to in the pandemic. I was just trying to use my voice to make sure the kids weren't going hungry, because I know exactly how it feels. For some reason, that seemed to rub certain people up the wrong way. It seems like they've been waiting for me to have a human moment so they can point the finger and say, see who he really is. I just think he's clutching on straws here, to be honest with you. Like, last season, Marcus Rashford was getting compared to Kylian Mbappe by the media. Last season, the media were saying that Marcus Rashford should be in with a shout of winning the Ballon d'Or. Last season, the British media were saying he's one of the best players in the world. Do I need to go on? Like, they support him when he's doing well. But when he scored 5 goals in all competitions, doesn't track back, doesn't look interested, throws his hands up in the air constantly, seems to have a really poor attitude and isn't producing anything, of course they're going to write negatively about you. What do you expect? You expect them to come out and be singing your praise when you've got 5 goals in all competitions and you don't look interested 99% of the time. Like, I just think he's literally clutching on straws to try and say that the reason these people are writing about me is because I helped feed children in the pandemic. Like, I just think it's absolutely stupid, to be honest. I really, really do. He then goes on to say, listen, I'm not a perfect person. When I make a mistake, I'll be the first one to put my hand up and say that I need to do better. But if you ever question my commitment to Man United, that's when I have to speak up. It's like somebody questioning my entire identity and everything I stand for as a man. I grew up here. I have played for this club since I was a boy. My family turned down life-changing money when I was a kid so I could wear this badge. I mean, from what I see from Marcus Rashford on the pitch, I do question your commitment to Manchester United. I do. You don't track back. You don't look interested. You don't even go into tackles properly. But what I will say this is, if I'm going to give a fair argument here, maybe that is just how Marcus Rashford is as a player. Maybe Marcus Rashford as a player doesn't feel like he needs to track back. Maybe Marcus Rashford as a player feels like he doesn't need to tackle people, or he doesn't need to work as hard as the others because he thinks he's better than them. And if that is the case, that's completely fine. But go and do that somewhere else. I don't want you doing that at Manchester United, Maybe it isn't a case of his commitment not being 100%. Maybe what we're seeing this season is just really what Marcus Rashford is as a player. And last season, he was lucky. I mean, he was. Like, if you actually watch back his goals from last season, most of them were from outside the box. They were moments of magic. And then the rest of the game, he did pretty much the same as what he was doing now. Didn't seem interested, didn't track back, didn't tackle people, didn't really play as a team player, but then would score a goal which would cover up the cracks. So maybe we need to look at this in a slightly different way. Maybe Marcus Rashford genuinely does think he's committed to Manchester United, but just his style of play is not what we need at the club. And that's what I've been saying for ages. And I think, that's why it would be best to move him on, because if he honestly thinks that what he's doing is good enough and he thinks that what he's doing is acceptable, then let him go and do that somewhere else. It doesn't need to be, written about by him in the media. You're right. And then he says, people will actually think I'm weird when I start talking about what United means to me, because if you're not me, then I'm sure it almost sounds fake. But you have to understand, when I was young, playing for United was everything. It was out of reach for us. It was hard to get there and even harder to stay there. When I was young, they used to have these 5-a-side tournaments all over Manchester where every kid had to go and pay £1 to get in. It was all ages. You had kids playing against almost grown men. I'd always be asking my mum for £1 because if you won the whole tournament, your team all got the prize money. It was just about enough for a ticket to Old Trafford. We were so young, but we actually won it a few times. I mean, I just think that this whole thing is just a PR attempt to try and get sympathy from people. I'm just not really into it. I don't buy into it. He's not a politician. He's a footballer. If you care this much about the club, do what we need you to do on the pitch, and you're simply not doing that. It's not as simple as saying, oh well, I'm not even talking about goals and assists. I'm just saying work hard, seem interested, show that you're a leader, show why you're earning 300 grand a week. Get stuck into tackles, track back, defend, run, press people, like all of these things, like Weghorst, all right? Weghorst was a rubbish player for Man United, but you can't question his commitment for a second. You can't. Weghorst worked unbelievably hard in his time at Manchester United. Marcus Rashford simply doesn't. And then for him to put out a statement slagging off anybody who's criticised him, ultimately saying that, how dare you question my commitment? I just think it's laughable and I think it's embarrassing. And maybe it has just come to this point now where they need to move him on, because I don't feel any sympathy for him. I feel sympathy for him on a human level. You know, if he's an introverted person and there's people writing about him, obviously that's not nice. But the only way that he can get around that is it's up to himself, isn't it? It's about him going out there and working hard and proving the haters wrong, and he just doesn't do that. But those are all the key points that was talked about in this thing he's put out. If you do want to go and read it, then obviously that's completely up to you. It's on Twitter. It's also on a website called The Players Tribune Football. So you can go and read that. It's really, really long. So I've squeezed it down. But what I want you guys to let me know, do you feel sympathy for Marcus Rashford? Do you feel putting out this statement was the correct thing? And do you think he should remain at the club? Let me know in the comment section below. I'm going to wrap the video up here, guys. This has been Daily Red Devil. Please like and subscribe before you leave, and I'll speak to you all a bit later.